Toby, how we doing?
We're doing great. I like the music.
Yeah, a little trying to add something a little bit new here, spruced it up a little bit for
Yeah.
those, not so it's just abrupt right into it. Well, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll see if we can do a little outro music as well. We'll see. I don't know.
Slow it down a little bit, eh?
Yeah, we got to pump the brakes. We don't want to go too fast, get out over our skis, start having problems. But it's good to be back. We're a little bit late today, or this week. Just had some things come up in life that happens, so apologize about that. But we're really excited to be back tonight. And how was your week overall, Toby?
Good. Well, I apologize. Monday night, I got my other job and I had to travel. If people
King work.
Venmoed and took care of us, maybe some advertising, maybe we could quit those jobs and just worry about this. But
Right.
until then, and I was in a hotel in Menominee, and I was kind of like, I could hear the room next to me's TV, and I'm like, does he want to listen to me do a podcast at 9:00 at night? So it wasn't a no-tell motel by any means, but it was awkward. So I
Was
just
it one
said
of
we
those
should do it
motels
another day.
where was it one of those motels where good things just don't generally happen?
No, the door was on the inside. It wasn't on the outside. So, but it was in Menominee, Wisconsin. So there's not a lot going on. I actually had a nice little dinner at the Applebee's, which was pretty delicious. That's a plug right
It was
there. Non-paid plug.
right. That's right. In the words of cousin Eddie, it was really nice.
Right, right. I got in and out quick.
All right, awesome. Well, cool. So we're thinking about tonight. What we wanted to talk about was parent coaches and parents in general when it comes to youth sports. I think we got a lot of good stuff that we can talk about this week. All right, and hopefully we'll have some stuff that you guys might want to chime in as well. If you want to, you can always hit us up at judgingbouncingballs@gmail.com. You can respond to us on YouTube on the channel if you watch there. And I think there's even comments on Spotify as well that I have to probably double check a little bit better. But we're excited to talk about it. Where do you want to start on this topic? There's a lot to get into with parent coaches and parents.
Well, this is one of the deeper topics that goes all the way back, to our youth, and then now. I mean, you plug in YouTube and you do parent fights with coach. I mean, it is endless. I was watching today. A guy came on a soccer field, threw the ref to the ground with his neck. I mean, he put his hand on his neck, and melees on the basketball court. I mean, it is. I don't know. You hear even 2 years ago, Mike McCarthy almost got into what the ref said. One of the basketball games, high school basketball game.
That's right.
Was our football, right? Like, he's a pretty big deal. Was fired, but this goes deep, and the reason the topic came up because I went back to when I was young. When I grew up playing baseball. I mean, my coach, it was the Bad News Bears. He would stand on the mound, cigarette, and he'd fire balls, and he'd have this big wind up, and you learned how to hit, and sometimes you got hit, and now it just started to progress, and we got to a point where the coach, if he's not spot on with his coaching, people are all over the board. If your kid's not playing enough minutes, if you're, all these problems. And so in thinking in general terms of one of the main problems of sports, I think is back to parents, let's be honest. And then you throw in the guy that volunteers to take on his kids' youth sports, and that's a whole nother ballgame. Have you ever coached?
Yeah, I have. I've actually coached a number of sports, which is kind of crazy. I've coached baseball, I've coached soccer, multiple leagues of soccer, coached basketball, football. Have I done any other ones? I don't think I have. Those are the big ones that I've done. But yeah, and most of the time, those are parent coaches. I was going to ask you, was that coach that was pitching back in the day? Was he a parent coach, or was he just kind of somebody that volunteered his time?
Nope, he was a parent coach, and it was small ball little league back in 1985. I bet 11 years old. Lost Street, and we were the Tigers. Terrible uniforms. I mean, I was a little chubby, skin tight pants. Everybody else had like these floppy pants. They looked good, and I think we had smalls. I think they all came with smalls. So I dealt with it. But
Your coach is like, Toby needs a small.
right, let's see how tight we can get these bad boys. And he was great, but he coached a long time. He had older boys that twins that played, and so I don't know. Nobody ever messed with him. He smoked a lot of cigarettes. He was pretty, everybody's like, hey. And back then, you really just let the coach, and he knew what he was doing. Now there was a lot of bad coaches back in the day, but I was, and I think that starts off the youth of today. When Macy was younger, even my daughter Allie was playing soccer at a real young age. I coached. I didn't know anything about soccer, but when they're 5, it didn't matter, right? I mean,
Right.
you just kick the ball in the goal. But as you grow, if you don't get that parent coach that is decent, you can be in trouble. You can lose a couple years of development. I mean, if just think now, if our girls were in a small town and didn't have the ability to have a higher level coach like we do, where would they be? They'd be
Right.
behind the 8 ball. So I think there's a lot of intricacies to parent coaches that we'll dive into today, and just kind of how we got here. But if you go back to just the basics of my coming through, I played baseball, basketball. I talked about the basketball, pink panty drill, which, but we still had we had guys that could coach. Now the talent level wasn't that great, but I think the coaching level was pretty good.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You bring up a good point. Like when you're young, obviously the biggest thing is just kind of having somebody that can keep the kids organized, keep them moving in the same direction, teach them really basic skills. But as it starts to move up, and I think when I coached youth soccer, I started at the 6-year-old and I ended the coaching at I think the U12 level. So that was kind of where my range, and I kind of felt like even the last couple of years of soccer, of like, man, I was just an assistant, and luckily the head coach had a lot of experience, but I started to feel like I was not being beneficial to the kids. And I remember I was at one practice, and we're going through the drill, and I'm teaching, telling them how to do it, and all of a sudden one of the girls is like, "No, we should probably do it the other way, because if you kick it from that side, it's coming off this foot, and that's not the right way to do it." And I had that moment of like, "Oh, son of, he knows more than I know. Dang it!"
It's
I'm like,
a bad sign.
So I went to the coach. I still remember I went to Joe, and I'm like, "Joe," I said, "I don't think this is really going to work out much longer, because I'm pretty sure the kids know more than I do at this point." And that's not a good sign. And if you've ever listened to us talk about soccer, you know that the level of being a soccer aficionado for me is, we'll say, limited at best. So it's just one of those things. It's like, I enjoy it. I can understand it, but I could never teach you how to be a really proficient. And I think that goes to your point of what ends up happening is, if you don't have that really high level coach, you start to get some stunted development, because there's only so far maybe that somebody who's either never played, or maybe soccer is not their life, if they don't really know a lot about the game, it's pretty tough to instill that in. Now, YouTube helps a lot. I remember Googling drills and Googling stuff and trying to educate myself, but there's something to be said about having experience in the game and being able to at least speak to what you did, or how you played, or how you were coached. And I think that's where parent coaches can be really good. There's some really positive things that come out of parent coaches, because they might have a much more fun atmosphere to the sport. They can make it a little bit more interesting to kind of hold numbers together, while kids are kind of in that young age where they can be easily distracted. So I think there's some really cool things about parents, but then I think there comes a point, I think it's right around that U11, U12 mark, where if you don't have a really good parent, it can be really detrimental to the kids, and then it becomes almost counterintuitive. Now you might have kids that start to leave the game because they don't feel like they're being challenged, they don't feel like it's competitive enough, and so that can be problematic as well. So yeah, it's an interesting. Definitely, parent coaches are, bless your hearts for all of you that do it, because when you see kids doing bunch ball when there's 5-year-olds out there chasing, just huddled around the ball kicking it, it takes a special person to be able to do that and coach that, because if you've never done it, it's an interesting. It's herding cats for sure. You got one kid picking daisies over here. You got another kid that's like, there's always one or two kids that are just like animals, right? They just dominate the game, and then you've got everyone else. They're just kind of like whatever. They're looking at the sky, they're looking at the ground, they're talking to the fans. It's like it's a real mismatch. But the point of it is like parents are really important to be able to do that because you're never going to be able to hire coaches probably at that level. And it really wouldn't be worth your money to go out and hire a coach to coach 6-year-olds. So you got to have a parent coach. But there's goods and bads.
Absolutely. And I think my soccer coaching, you're right, though. There's always one or two kids that were really good and they would score 7-8 goals a game because it's not hard to score, right? It's like 40 yards long. And my daughter Macy was one of those. And my problem was I wanted to win. I wanted to win at all costs, and it didn't matter. So if I didn't take those kids out, the top two kids, we were going to score a lot of goals. And what makes people happier than winning? I mean, you tell me that you're going to learn, like it's fun to learn. No, winning rules. And especially when I told them there's no treat if you don't win. So the treat was very important. Now, was I ever going to take the treat away? No, because Sally's mom went to the store and bought, Jolt and Snickers for everybody. So, but side note, we had a girl and her parents were in the medical field and they weren't around a lot. And it was their treat night. And I'm like, oh man, I don't think she's got anything. Like, I feel really bad. Like I should have been better and maybe gone and gotten some and just back up. Ice cream truck comes around the corner, pulls up next to the field. It's all paid for. Everybody on the team got to pick an ice cream. It was amazing. Yes. So everybody from there, the parents figured it out how to get it there. Everybody in the park is looking at us, and I'm like, should have been on our team. It was amazing. So the next guy brings like Capri Sun and some Teddy Grahams, and we're like, that sucks.
There's probably a riot. You suck.
Right. Her parents brought the ice cream truck.
Dude, that's a good idea. And you bring up, I think we brought this up a little bit on one of the earlier shows, but man, I'll tell you, without treats at that level, my daughter would have never played. The one that plays on Macy's team, she would have never played. She would have given it up at like that year. That was the only thing that got her on the field was if you go out on the field, you can have a treat. And then she would finally go out on the field and she did okay. She wasn't like the best player out there, but she did it okay once she was on the field. But man, without the treat promise, curtains, she was never going to do it. And man, that's like the only way we could get her to put her cleats on. The only way was there's going to be a treat at the end. And, it's Capri Suns and orange slices, or it's, you get some parents that are like really healthy. They'll bring like the super organic and like everything's amazing. And then you get some that's like, Rice Krispie Treats, Oreos, and Mountain Dew.
Right. The best is the healthy parents, and then you walk to your car and you see the snack laying on the ground. Little Johnny's like, "Screw this, we're going for ice cream."
I'm not gonna lie, my wife is the organic one, so that was always like the really healthy treat. And it was just funny because then one day you'd show up and there's like Gushers and those little drinks where you have to twist the top and pull it. It's like Kool-Aid or whatever. And then we're handing out like organic Capri Sun. It's not even Capri Sun. It's some off-brand, but it's organic. Yeah, it's hilarious. Made me laugh. But man, the treats it's a real deal. That is a thing. And if you forgot treats, whew,
I've run to the store at the last hour, like festival foods, like just grabbing, like doesn't matter. A drink and an eat. Well, let's look at now, right? I get a treat. I drove to Indianapolis, so I could sit in the lobby and have a couple beers. I mean, that's kind of my treat.
Right.
My kid, I don't know what she does. Don't care. Not my problem. I'm there to drink a few beers.
But yeah, man, the youth parent or the coach parent is it's definitely important. It is without them we would be kind of lost. But then it starts to progress, after that little rec league, then you start to move into really having parents be involved and you start to do that little travel, or competitive. And that can always be tough too, because having been in that situation, you start to coach your own kid and that's uncomfortable because there's always that feeling. You said you coach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a little uncomfortable, honestly, if you've never done it before when you're coaching your own kid and then there's parents watching the decisions. And again, like I said, I was never the head coach. I was always the assistant, so it was a little bit off of me. I didn't have as much stress. But there's still, when your kid either does something good or something bad, you do feel a little bit more pressure. It's kind of one of those like, ugh, I better be careful not to, do something here. You feel like you have to be a little harder on your kid than you are on anybody else. Like your kid does something good and they come off and you're still kind of getting on them. The other kid does something that's kind of average and you're like, you're the best ever.
Right. Well,
I've
you're
never
right,
seen
though.
something so amazing.
Right. You push every kid down and give your kid a hug. But you're right. Your kids get yelled at more. They play a little less. And if they score or whatever the sport is, you feel like you can't even cheer. You got to almost kind of be like, you cheer the lineman, right? I mean, if your kid's a quarterback, you're like, nice block.
Right. Yeah.
And then the running back scores and you're all over him like he's Walter Payton. I mean, it's – But I will say the sports that I've coached – I ran a youth football program for years coming out of college in Green Bay, 7th and 8th grade, and then I coached baseball and rugby. So I coached 3 sports that my kids didn't play in.
Interesting.
That was great. Yeah, so the best sport I coached was rugby. I coached high school rugby here at Bayport, and when it first started through a friend of mine got it started. And you want to talk about getting to the end of the game, and every parent in the stands is like, did we win? Like, nobody knew the rules. Nobody knew the scores. Like, it was like, I'm like, yeah, we won. They're like, oh, amazing. like nobody could critique because nobody knew anything about the sport. So I felt really good about that because nobody bothered me. Baseball, I've coached my friends, helped him coach the last 2 sons, and we've won some championships. And every time, it's funny because I get to first base, and they're always like, I'm first base coach because I'm not allowed to be third base coach. I'm not trusted with the signs. Wow. I forget them. If it's cap, nose, just too much. But it's funny because the opposing team would always be like, where's your kid? And I'd be like, I don't have a kid out here. And they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just really like the sport and helping my friend.
Reaper.
Right. The cops are for me. That's going to sound so bad. Oh, well.
You can't even do any good deeds anymore.
Right. What's some a-hole calling me a creeper? But anytime there was an issue with anytime there was an issue with the lineup, who starts, who sits, I took the blame because nobody could be mad because I didn't have a soldier in the fight. I was just part of me. Now, did I favor kids? Absolutely, because you want to win, which is wrong too. But it happens, right?
Well,
but
I was just going to say, you bring up a good point, though, and that is, like the leagues, when you're really young, they say you don't keep score. Nobody keeps score. But guess who always knew the score?
Everybody. Every parent.
Yeah.
Every kid.
Well, no.
Right?
Every kid on the field, they all knew. Like, it didn't matter if I still would hear coaches like, oh, we're not keeping score. Kids are like, well, no, but we're winning.
Right. They only need 2 more runs. Yeah. That I think is the biggest hogwash, like the don't keep score. I just don't get it. Like, I get if you're going to do a young rec league and you just throw the ball and go, but everybody keeps score. It's sport. Yep. Everybody wants to win. And you walk through everything, and you go, my big question that I came up talking about our theme today is who wants to be a parent coach anymore? Like, who wants to take that bullet? And the only one thing I'll say this about our soccer club, I think at U12 is the last year that you can be a parent coach.
Which I actually thought was a really cool rule, honestly. I thought that in our club where we came from, that was not the case. And when you told me that, I was like, that's awesome, because I think that actually it saves parents from being in that really uncomfortable situation as they get older. And it also promotes better play in general, in my opinion.
Right.
Because if you get professional coaches in, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I think if you're a good coach, because I know there's some licensed parent coaches that are class, I don't know how the class, but they're allowed to coach other teams, but it's kind of difficult also if you want to watch your kid play.
Yep.
But I really respect the rule because I think it takes that, like you said, it takes that question out of play of because now you're getting into a higher league. Yeah, U13, you're playing on the big field. You're playing, YNL or whatever the terms are to go play other teams. It's travel farther.
Right.
It should be just called TF for travel farther.
TFPM. Travel
more.
farther, pay more.
Yes. Yeah. I will petition our club director and be like, let's just call it
TFPM.
TFPM. You playing in the TFPM this year? Absolutely.
That's amazing.
We got something. But you're paying more and you're traveling, and you don't want to go to Michigan, and have, and get your tail whipped, even, because even if there's a parent coach, we saw it growing up where there's always questions. There's always questions about playing time. There's always questions about, who's friends with the coach, who knows stuff. So I think it's just better to have that outside, and you're paying, by paying more, you're actually investing in the club, and then they're kind of investing in your kids. So I think it's a really good thing.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I think if you're listening to this and your club doesn't have that, I think that's one of the things I just found that really refreshing. So I think it's a really good thing. I would encourage your club to think about the same thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we work through the age groups, like we said, U13, we started to get into a better coach, but in smaller cities, and you get into high school, and who's coaching high school? It might not be a parent, but it might be the band teacher, because they struggle for teachers.
Yeah, I can give a little perspective on that. What's interesting, from a high school perspective, and I get to be on some of those conversations, and without going into details, I mean, obviously the district has a preference for a teacher to be a coach. And it doesn't mean that they wouldn't take somebody that's not a teacher. Obviously, if the right candidate presents themselves, they'll gladly put them in front of, students if it works out and it's mutually beneficial. But ideally, you really would like somebody in the room or in the building, and that's where this year, for the first time in the history of our high school, we actually have a hockey coach that's in the building, and there are a lot of benefits to that. I mean, you get those coach player relationships get facilitated a little bit more. Whereas if you've got a coach that's out working in the in the real world and they're not around the kids just for practice, yeah, they can still build a relationship, but it does help to have them be in the building. But to your point, what you're hitting on too is that sometimes in that situation, you don't always have the most qualified candidate that can be the coach. And sometimes you ask the band teacher to be the coach, and maybe the band teacher's never played tennis before, right? Or they've never played golf, but you need somebody and you don't have anybody that's qualified. So it's like, well, I guess we'll take Joe Schmo over here or Sally Mae because we don't have anybody else. And first of all, kudos to that person for stepping up to the challenge and to the responsibility of coaching high school athletes in a sport that they maybe don't have the experience or knowledge around. Like, I give them a lot of credit. That's a really uncomfortable position to be in, but it also puts the kids at a challenging situation as well, because they may not be able to get the skill development or the coaching or the advice that they need. And so that's a really tough situation that a lot of schools find themselves in, especially small schools. If you're in a small community, you may not have any other option other than, like, just a teacher that might have an interest in a sport. That might be the most qualified thing they have, is to just have some interest. It's like, well, you've got a pulse, you're interested, get out there and get her done.
Coach them up.
Yeah, and so I don't know. That's it, but that's the one area where you start to see possibly inexperienced coaching come into play. And I've heard some really cool stories about that working out really well, and I've heard some situations where that didn't work out so well, and it's unfortunate, but that's just kind of the world we live in, unfortunately.
Well, the first parent that says they can complain to a coach because they're getting paid should be slapped. I mean, they're making a couple $1,000. I mean,
yeah,
I don't even know what the stipend is, but it's not. Let's say it's $3,000, right? And if you break that down for all the hours that you're putting into, from breaking down film to from preseason through season till after season, I mean, it's pennies on the dollar. And I can see
Yeah.
why bother, because all you're going to do is be ridiculed for something that you're trying to be good about. And it's not. There's some sports out there where they big time, like Division I high school football coaches. I'm sure they've have different stipends through the year of different, weight room and different things they can get, and they can turn it into a pretty good gig if you win. I mean, if you make it to a big level high school job, but there's very few of those too.
Yeah.
I mean, high school tennis coaches don't get extra love presents in their paycheck.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You just hit on something. I'll share a couple experiences. I gave some of the things that I've coached. When I coached youth, I'll give two from football, one from youth football and one from high school football. And these are just interactions with parents. And you're correct. In high school, as an assistant, you get a couple grand stipend. And just for the context, you end up spending probably about, in 2 days, you end up spending probably about 6 to 7 hours a day, before school starts in coaching, because you're doing two different practices. Once school starts, you're probably putting in at least 3 hours a day, with basically the only day you have off is either Saturday or Sunday, one of the 2 days. So that's an idea of the time. So it's a lot of energy. And you're correct. You don't get paid that much to do it. I mean, yeah, you get a couple $1,000s, but over a 2 to 3 month span, 6 days a week, you're probably averaging 3 to 4 hours a day. It's not really that great. But anyway, so what the stories that I had is I remember I was on a youth football team. I was the coach, and we had a kid that he was a decent kid, but he had pretty decent hands, but was just a bear. I mean, a bear in practice. Wouldn't do what you told him. I mean, if you asked him to do something, he'd kind of mouth off to you. He was just, he's just a kid that really didn't take instruction really well, unfortunately. Now, hopefully he's doing great. I don't know where he's at this point, um, but he was a bear. But his dad would literally come down to the sideline in sixth grade football, and he would like, "You got to put my son in. He's got the best hands on the team. You got to do this. You got to do this. You got to do this." And you're just like, dude, I'm volunteering my time at this point. I do not need you chirping in my ear in the middle of a game trying to get your son the ball in a league where we can barely pass, and you want me to throw deep to him every play. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, what is wrong? And the worst part about it was I knew this guy from a former job, and it's like I just shook my head like, what is happening here? And then the funny story on that was this is one of those uncomfortable situations because my daughter was on the team, right? My daughter on the tackle football team. This is Amelia, and she led the
Did they
team
have,
foot in.
did they have snacks there too?
Oh, they did. No, they didn't. I shouldn't say that. But she actually led the team in touchdowns. Like she was kind of a beast, right? Because she enjoyed it. She loved it. And then he's like giving grief about her playing because I don't know if it's the girl or whatever. I'm like, dude, I got no part in this. I'm not making the decision on who she plays. I let the subs go to somebody else because again, I didn't want to be seen as like favoring her. But I'm like, you got a lot of nerve to come down here and like petition for your kid who like we put him in and he struggled. And then I don't know. But anyways, that was one example. And then the other one, I got cornered by a mom, right, in high school football because her kid was not getting enough playing time. Meanwhile, this kid literally would, in the middle of practice, would like walk off the practice field and like go over like 100 yards away from the field and like sit under a tree. Like, I'm not joking. Like, this happened. And we would like go and talk to him, like, "Hey, is everything okay?" And like, listen, I'm thinking there were probably he never really confided, but I'm thinking there were some things that happened like in his personal life that were struggles. So like, no disrespect, like I'm sure he was dealing with some stuff. But she confronted us like he needs to be playing more, and not only does he need to be playing more, he should be the starting quarterback. And and she's like, he throws a really good spiral. And it was like everything I could do to just not laugh right in her face and be like, "You've got to be joking me at this point," because it's like parents see their kids in a totally different light than what a coach does. And when you're in coaching, and you know this, when you're in practice every day and you see a kid, the good and the bad and the ebbs and the flows of what they do. And in his case, I'm sure he's a good kid. I know him well. He's actually on the team again, and he's a good kid, but he struggles athletically. And it's like when you see that side of it, and then you have the parent like really like uncomfortably pushing for you to play them, like yelling from the stands in the games. Like I would hear her occasionally. It's just like, man, there's such a disconnect between reality and like where they think everything is. And that's where I think it's a struggle for parents. Like so far, like right now, there's a lot of parents that don't have a good grasp on where their kids are realistically in their sport.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's free time or if it's the helicopter parents, but we had the same issue. We had a hill, and we practiced on a baseball diamond in the hill, and I had to make the parents go sit on the hill or sit in their cars because it was getting. They were standing next to me while we were running plays, and so I'd make them sit on the hill, and then I'd walk down another hill to a baseball diamond, like 400 yards away, and they would try to, and I'd be like, "Get back on the hill," because they'd get involved in everything.
Yeah.
Every time we turned around, I had a mom. We played a UP school, and now the middle school I taught at was a big middle school, and we played a team out of Escanaba, and we didn't have a tackle until middle of the way through the second quarter. Like we didn't even get a guy down. Like every time they'd run the ball, 1st and 10, touchdown. Like there's nothing we could do. And I remember there was one kid that didn't play. He didn't want to play. And of course, after the game, Captain Kick Pants mom came over and she's furious. My kid didn't play. My kid practices. What is going on? And I go get your kid. And she's like, yes. I go get him now. So she drags him out of the car, and I'm like, tell your mom what I asked. He's like, what? I go, what did I ask you in the middle of the first quarter? I said, it's your time. Get in there. Nope. I'm like, okay, you're out. And the mom was so mad at him. Like I could see him, like she was like screaming as they're driving away. And I am like, I don't know what to do. Like I said, ma'am, he's on the team because his buddies are on the team. And I'm fine with that. Like, I don't care. Like if he does, like he can go play wide receiver. He's not fast. He's never going to catch the ball because we can't throw the ball that far anyways.
Right.
But it was just amazing to me that the parents don't take 2 seconds to ask their kids, hey, what happened? Because I think half the time they don't ask, and the other half the kids are like, well, I don't know, coach didn't put me in. I probably would have had a tackle.
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't. We didn't tackle anybody. We were terrible. We tried. And that wasn't coaching.
Yeah, but you bring up another good point too, and that is there's often a disconnect between what the kid sees as reality and what they tell their parents. Like I think they often want to soften the blow. Like it's not maybe they don't want to like say, well, I wasn't good enough, or in his case, he didn't want to say, Mom, I didn't want to go in because he knew that would make her mad. So it was way easier to just be like, Coach didn't put me in, and just walk away. And it's and that's easier for him. And so I've actually seen that happen exactly what you did just with other people, where they call the kid over and be like, hey, what did I say? And they're like, oh, I didn't want to go in. That's happened before, and so I'm glad you did that because at least it kind of shows the parent like, dude, I'm doing everything I can over here. I'm trying.
Yeah, and it's funny. So you got grade school, high school, and then college. I was sitting with our local D3 team, who was at the time they were winning conference after conference and making the NCAA Division III playoffs. And I was having a beer with one of my buddies was the coaches, and I had a beer after, and I asked the head coach, I'm like, so how it's got to be great. You don't have to deal with parents. And he goes, you don't understand. We're Division III. I take phone calls from parents all the time. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You're a college football coach. She goes, it doesn't matter. People think their kids should play at every level. And it just floored me that was
Crazy.
still happening when your son is 20 and he's not playing football. Like they were fantastic. They were a great D3 school, but I was literally floored by that people took the time to still yell at the coach. And then we talk about we have a lack of coaching. And make it worse, we have a lack of umpires and refs. So it just rolls downhill.
Yeah, just a sidebar on the refs thing. We're going to have a friend on. I think you and I talked about that. We got to do that about the reffing and what's going on, because that is really a problem in high school athletics right now. We're struggling to find refs, and I can tell you that is something that we struggle with here at Smash, finding refs. We've done a pretty good job, and we have some good ones that we've got on a Rolodex that we can kind of use. But listen, that's a real problem right now in high school sports is people don't want to ref And to your point, people don't want to coach either because I'm telling you that that really puts a coach in an uncomfortable position. And I actually had a couple of times this year where parents approached me as an assistant coach and they're like, "Hey, what about my kids' playing time?" And in some cases, I knew the parent pretty well. And I can tell you honestly, guess what I did when they told me about the playing time? I did nothing because if I would have gone and talked to the coach, the head coach about that, it would have probably ruined that kid's chances even more
Right.
because it is there is nothing that shuts down a coach about a player faster than if a parent's like pissing and moaning about playing time. So for the parents out there listening, I'm just telling you, don't do it. A, you're driving coaches away because they can't deal with all this constant, griping from the parents. And then when they find out that parents want to kind of force them, and let's be face it, coaches are kind of stubborn generally. If it's a good coach, they're probably pretty stubborn in some regard and set in their ways. And so if you go to them and push them on a playing time, they're going to be like, nope, I'm gonna push back a little bit, and then it creates an even worse situation. So what I did is I took what they said to me, and I'm like, okay, I appreciate you letting me know, and I just ate it. Like I petitioned for the kid because it was the right thing to do anyway, because I saw some improvement. But if I knew if I went to that coach and said, hey, we need to get him more playing time because the mom talked to me, no bueno. That's not going anywhere.
Right.
And I don't think parents understand that that's what's happening is they're causing coaches to not want to coach, and then they're also hurting their own kids' chances, unless that kid is just so unbelievably talented, which again most parents think that their kid is. But I can tell you the reality is the kids that are really really good, the parents don't have to advocate for them because they're on the field anyway. Because if you're really really good, coaches in especially in high school and higher level club teams they want to win. And the reality is, they're going to do whatever they can. They're going to do whatever they think is best to get them that chance to win. Whether you agree with that or not, maybe you're not a big fan of winning it all. That winning is the ultimate thing, but that's what coaches want. They want to win, and they're trying to win, and they're trying to do whatever they can. So if you come to them and like talk to them about playing time, yeah, it just frustrates coaches, especially when you're in a losing situation, which I've been a part of as well. And when parents bring that up in losing situations, it's like, do you really think that we're out here trying to lose this game? Like we're trying to win. Your kid, if we thought he was going to help us win, we'd be playing it a lot.
Right. Trust us. Yeah. No, and I advocate for my kids to lead the charge. I won't do it. Now, will I facilitate the meeting? Absolutely, but I don't say a word because we've been through
Yeah.
it with both my kids. What do you got to say to the coach? And it usually starts with, what do I need to do better? I always say, ask the question because at least
Yep.
you take their feedback. And then if you do the feedback, now you have a leg to stand on and be like, all right, I'm working hard, but it never comes from me because like you said, no good can come from it. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. I just talked to a parent that was really disappointed about in this. I'm not involved in this at all, but he was really disappointed about his son didn't make varsity for the hockey team. And my one of the things I said was like, hey, the good news is he's not a senior. He still has the ability to improve on his skills and make that team. That is something that he still has the ability. The varsity team, he still has the ability to do that. And I think sometimes as a parent you kind of lose that perspective and you forget that that your player still has the ability to make his whatever dream he has, he can still do that. There's not a coach out there. I mean, unless that player has like really wronged a coach in a way that like they violated like personal trust or violated some coaches love a redemption story. They love the, hey, I took this guy from the practice squad or from the JV team all the way up to the starting unit because it's like it kind of validates that like they did a good job coaching or they did a good job. They love that stuff. There's never a coach that's going to be like, man, I'm going to punish this kid. I mean, unless there's been like some major like you accuse the coach of doing something wrong or like publicly, where you created this rift. But if you bust your butt and do what you need to do, coaches love to promote guys. Because not only that, but it also tells other people in the team, like, hey, if you really work hard and you work on your skills, this is what can happen. So this idea that you have to go and petition for playing time, you're doing exactly the right thing, and that is advocate and say like, hey, what do I need to do to improve? Like, what are the skills I need to get better at that would make me a varsity player or make me a starting player on the club team or make me whatever that is. don't ask for playing time, like earn that playing time. And that's going to be way more valuable than, just trying to advocate for playing time, because even if they give you the playing time, there's going to be resentment there. And that's never a good situation.
Well, no, nobody's, because by you getting more playing time, someone's got to get less playing time.
Exactly.
And what I don't understand in high school sports today, when did varsity become the end all cure all? Like as a freshman, like remember we used to start, you'd play freshman and then you'd make JV. And if you were good, you might bounce up and down a little bit. By the time you were a junior, you played varsity. But nowadays, if freshmen don't make varsity on all different levels, it's like this, holy crap, like high school's over.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, I know some sports that, and I've seen it in tennis, there's a lot of high schools around that don't have a tennis program, and they try. But so anybody makes varsity, but on a good program, I'm with you. Build into it. Now, if you're exceptional and you're going to play on varsity, I'm fine with it. But if they ever bring a freshman up to sit on the bench on varsity, I'm absolutely against every minute of it, because it does no good. And nowadays it's like people just want that varsity letter or that to go to explain. I think it's a topic that they love talking about, because I don't understand it.
Yeah. Well, and if we're talking about letters, we covered that in one of our earlier podcasts. Like, you don't have to have the letters per se, depending on your sports. I mean, being a multi-sport athlete is important, but it doesn't mean you have to letter in it. I mean, you can still be involved in the JV role, and it's still beneficial to you in developing skills that are applicable to the main sport that you want to play. So
yeah, especially if your friends are playing and you go have fun. It's got to be a relief to play. Maybe like I know our girls play that high level where there's no messing around. I mean, you're out there to win, and it is 80 minutes or however, I don't even know how many minutes we play anymore. Sometimes it's 60, 70, 80, who knows. But it is a constant battle when you're on the field, right? And then I would assume to go play a JV or something that doesn't have that all-in atmosphere, it's got to be kind of relieving.
Yeah, I would think so, but I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem like that's always the case from parents. So
I mean, as a parent, I'd yell the whole time, "Why is my kid on JV? This is ridiculous. I'm a booster. I'm on a pretty big time podcast, and I will tear you down."
Do you know who I am?
Right. I'm going to get shirts for us. You know who I am. Like, literally know who I am.
Yeah, so from a parent coaching perspective, I mean, anything else you wanted to add on that? There's a couple other parent stories I'd like to share, the things that we've seen. You and we've seen a couple things, and then just in general, what we've seen from back to your bum fights or whatever it is that you're watching with parents. So is there anything on the parent coaching aspect you wanted to share that we haven't?
Nothing that off the tip of my tongue, but it's if one thing we take away is just to give them a break. Everybody's out there doing their best. Now, there are bad coaches, and I think if there's ignorant people that believe there aren't bad coaches, I think that's one thing. But you get in a situation where if you're playing club level or you're playing high level soccer or football or basketball or whatever, and the coach is bad, because I've heard it. Other sports that people pay $2,000 to get on a club team. And one was, I think, volleyball. And it was like the coach sat on the bench. It's like, what are we doing? Like, so there are instances all the way around, but,
And I think there's ways to handle that in the proper channels too. Like, obviously, and this is the advice I'd give, if you really have a problem with the way somebody's coaching, I think it would be, and it's not about your kids' playing time, it would be really important to first address them directly. If that doesn't work, then you can start to go to either the club or the athletic director or the activities director within your school. There are ways to address that in a proper channel without, like, some of the things that I tend to see, like we just went through a really tough season at SPASH for football, and I'm not, sugarcoating it when I say that I know a lot of the parents got a little caustic in the stands, right? They kind of fume to each other. They get upset about this and upset about this, and it's like, I get that happens, but I'm just telling you, it doesn't solve anything. And if you're listening to this and you're a parent, it's like, please remember when you're doing that, you're not solving any problems. Because eventually your players hear that, and then that spills over into the locker room, and then they start to like, wow, the coaches are all idiots. And it's like, and listen, to your point, maybe there are some coaches that have some issues. not going to sit here and defend every coach, but on the reality is a lot of things can be solved with just some direct communication.
We had, when I coached baseball, our philosophy was we didn't touch a bat until like the third practice. We have a way of doing our everything we wanted to get out of practice, and it involved throwing, it involved catching, and it involved the basics of baseball. And everybody was like, why aren't we batting? Why aren't we hitting? We got to hit. And by the fifth game, we were throwing people out at the plate at a very, at 10 and 11 years old. And people finally started to see what we were trying to get. We were trying to teach the game. But early on, people just, it's all go. And I think if people just took a breath, like you said, if a parent came to me and said, hey, what is your philosophy, or what are we doing here? I could explain it to them instead of telling their kid in the car, and then their kid goes to practice and tells the next kid that my dad thinks coach is, coach sucks, and then all of a sudden I got all 5 kids on the bench staring at me because I suck.
Coach Toby's a moron.
Right. And I'm buying sunflower seeds, trying to get them on my side,
All right. So one of the first stories that I thought was really interesting when we talk about craziest things we've seen as parents, unless you have something else you wanted to add.
Go ahead.
All right.
Lead us.
So, dude, here's what I saw this 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. First time my daughter had just started playing hockey. We were in the state championship for her league level, which, let's be honest, wasn't the highest level. And it is what it is. But it was the state championship tournament, whatever. So we're up in Superior, Wisconsin, which is a lovely place in the middle of February. You've never been. And we're up there watching, and all of a sudden, I've never seen anything like this. We were waiting for the game to end before us, and there was we ended up watching it on video, but there was apparently something happened in the game prior. A girl hit another girl, and they felt like in girls hockey, checking is not allowed. And they felt like that was an egregious play, something that was kind of endangering. And so what ended up happening was the dad of the player was like walking through the stands, and the mom, I'm not joking, the mom came from the top row, ran down the stands. So you're talking like 10 levels. She just ran straight at him, hit him like Ray Lewis. I mean, lowered her shoulder, drove him straight into the glass. And you see the glass just go like they just bam, and a fight just gets crazy. And now you got a guy versus a girl, which it was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. And instantly, like, the parents are separating, like trying to pull people apart. And this mom is just going nuts. And we watched it back on Live Barn like 100 times. Because we're just like, we just couldn't believe this mom like came top shelf off the ropes and took this dude right into the glass. And the kids are watching because they're like shaking in the middle of the ice. And the kids are like all turned and like, what the heck is going on? I mean, that must have been some unbelievable conversations in the car ride home about how mom came off the top rope and took out the opposing fan's dad. It was crazy.
I bet you could pick out which kid was hers, though, right? I mean, you can be like, yeah, that's her right there.
Yeah. But that's the craziest thing I've ever seen parent-wise. You and I have seen a couple things. I don't know if you want to share the one from Schaumburg.
It's another brilliant tournament. It's 18 degrees, early March. I think it's March.
Or 30 mile an hour winds.
The headwind right into our faces, and we are freezing. We have every ounce of clothing on, like it's a tailgate at a Packer game. And there were 3 refs, or 2 ARs, they call them, and then a head judge or referee guy in the middle. And they all had headsets on, and I don't know, we were beating them 1-0 or 2-0, and the mom started chirping. And all of a sudden, the head ref walks over and starts dropping red cards on the moms. And it was fantastic. I think he gave out 2 or 3.
And they were chirping pretty bad. I mean,
yeah, it was warranted. So the ref stops the game. Now we're winning, so the time just never stopped, and we're laughing. And they brought in the tournament director, and come to find out, I don't know if you can give a ref a red or a parent a red card, but I was very impressed. And they never left.
And he gave out, what did he give, 3?
I think he gave 2. It was like 3. It was a lot of them. He was just putting them on people's foreheads, like. And we're just like, no idea what's happening. It's so cold. It didn't matter. But like, I just don't, people yell all the time.
Yeah, we were so excited to see those red cards because they were kind of just getting a little bit like occasionally you'll see this from parents. They just every little thing is all like the ref is always against them. Why don't you call this? Why don't you do this? And I'll give our team's fans a lot of credit. So we tend to get pretty boisterous, which I think is okay. Like if you get you're enthusiastic, you know, I know other fans probably don't like our fans because they tend to be really like we tend to get loud, but that's not always a bad thing because it's not usually negative. But when you start to get negative towards the fan, like towards the ref and towards, you know, the calls that they're making, and you're always complaining, which was what ended up happening. It's like, come on, just so it was kind of fun to watch the ref go over and be like, yeah, you got to get out of here. But then the problem was he had no support. He's like, you need to leave, and they're like, no, and he's like, yes, and they just stood there,
And then nobody laughed.
and nobody left. And what did he sit there 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then
It had to have been 10.
and then the
We
game
burned
resumed.
10.
It was like, well,
Yeah.
they're not going to leave. I'm just going to start the game.
Well, it's like our first time broadcasting. We were down in Des Moines. I remember the team we were playing. I don't know if it was from South Dakota or Minnesota, but every time they came in, it was cleats up. And that's a big no-no. And we have a dad on our sideline. We'll call him Mike. He's a big guy, but super good guy. Like one of the nicest guys. Like if Mike gets mad, it's probably there's a reason. And I just remember him just being like, this is ridiculous. Like they're coming in cleats up, and then the other parents are chirping back. And one of our dads, I look over and he's just flat out giving them the finger. And I'm like, I'm like, well, we're going to fight. Like this is going to happen. And I kept you on my right because they were on the right. So I figured I could thrust you into him a little bit and I could come over the top because I'm not really good at fighting. I'm actually pretty bad.
I've never thrown a punch. Well, that's not true. I did once with a friend when we were trying to like play box, but that's about it. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't win any boxing matches or fights for sure.
I could get into all the stories of me bouncing down in Milwaukee, but they were questionable at best. I was really bad at bouncing too. Like I was a bigger guy, but I had this needed to stay intact. I mean, I didn't need to get hit.
Any famous people for the places that you bounced?
A lot of bucks would come in, but back then in the '90s, I had no idea who they were.
They were all really good in the '90s.
They were good. I think Paul Mokeski came in once, like a 7-foot white guy. I'm like, that's got to be Paul. But it was never anything like no Brewers, nobody worth a damn back then. We could go to all the sporting.
In the '90s, what Brewers would that like Jeff Jenkins?
I think it was before. I think it was like Vaughn. Was it Vaughn?
Vaughn, okay.
Because we'd go to the Brewer games. It was like $3 to get in to sit in the old county station bleachers.
Yeah.
And then you could have, you'd get a beer for like $4. So we'd go over there and park and we'd do the game. And I remember we made it on Sports Center. So we were at the Oakland Athletics game, and there's nobody in the game. And I forget, I don't know if it was McGuire. Somebody hit a bomb and it was coming right at us. And you can see on Sports Center, the camera goes, and then you just see 4 people completely scatter, and the ball hits the chair and bounces into somebody else's hand. We were the 4 that scattered. Didn't want to get hit. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to if it was McGuire. I actually got the only game I went to County Stadium was in McGuire and Sosa's Chase, and I was in County Stadium during that. So that was
really
about the same time you were there.
I went to the opener. We always skipped school to go to the home opener, and I remember the home opener vividly because they gave away baseballs, and somebody got fired because everybody in the stadium was 14 sheets to the wind. And I forget what inning, all of a sudden, we all let them go. Like, nobody left the stadium with a baseball because we were just firing them on the field. And it was a disaster, but it was so funny because we had a whole bunch of guys and we all went with different bar buses, and we'd all you'd find your way back home, and we'd be like, anybody got their baseball? And they're like, nope. And there was one sucker on the – right, it's like handguns and 10-cent tappers.
Hey, you
but
know what we should give out, everybody? In Philadelphia? Batteries. That would be great.
yeah,
Let's give them something they can throw.
right, give him a hard projectile. But I remember the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel the next day, or whatever it was called back then, and they had the picture of one guy was throwing it, like one guy. And he like out of 50,000, you're like, really? That guy's gonna get in trouble.
Yeah. Can you imagine today if that was like Twitter and all that stuff? He'd probably lose his job. Poor guy.
Oh, they would drag him through the coals.
Yeah. Yeah. Back then it's just a Tuesday.
Thank God we lived back then. But getting back to coaches quick. So my rugby coach was nicknamed Psycho. Now Psycho passed last year. Really good, Tom Schmidt, really great guy. But I learned to respect Tom. He coached rugby his whole life. He played, and we were sitting in our bar, home bar, Judge's Irish Tab. Nothing Irish about the place, which made it better. But I remember we were sitting there, and a guy mouthed off to him, and he said, "I'll give you 3 punches, and after the third one, you're in trouble." The guy hit him twice. Tom never moved. Said, "You get one more, and I'm going to beat the living hell out of you." And the guy stopped, sat down, and they shared beers the rest of the night.
What?
Yep, that was Psycho. Guy was fantastic.
That's crazy.
He would drag you out of a fight. He'd fight for you. He was just, we were in college. He was an accountant.
That's crazy. Well, rest his soul. You said he passed away?
He did. Heart attack
That's
last
too
year.
bad.
Yeah, it really is. He was really big in the sport and real good guy.
Well, anything else you want to add on this? Man, we've gone almost an hour here. We should probably wrap this baby up for the listeners. Are probably like, please make it end.
We're double down.
We're double down.
No, but next week we're trying to fire up our first guest. We've got a couple options on the table, so we'll see where that goes. But I think it's a perfect time to bring in some outside perspective into youth sports. One being on the soccer side, and one being on the hockey side. So we're still working on some bigger things too. So I think we're starting to get rolling here.
Yeah, and if you have somebody that you would maybe want us to interview that is past high school, shoot us a text, or not a text, but a note on either. Well, again, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Shoot us a note on the YouTube if you'd like to do that, or you can email us at judgingbouncingballs@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you for your suggestion. If maybe you want to make that connection, if you know somebody. You could actually CC us together to try to make that happen. We'd love to interview some people. We got hopefully some guests coming up here that'll make some pretty interesting conversation just about their perspective as well. So, yeah, I think that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Perfect. Anything else?
We're almost close on 300 views, right? 300 listens, or what are we calling them?
Yeah, something like that. It's somewhere around 300. But yeah, so things are catching on, and again, sorry about the delay to get this one out, but we're really glad to hear that some of you were like, "Hey, where the heck's the podcast?" Because that means that you're listening. So we appreciate that for sure, and keep listening, keep sharing it. Give us some 5-star reviews and let your friends know about it as well. And if you give us some feedback, it's only going to make it a little bit better.
Yeah, especially if it's negative. We're not going to pay attention to it at all.
Exactly. We only want to hear positive things. Oh, right. Hey, I got one thing for you. So guess what happens tomorrow night?
December 8th.
You know, you're a Bayport guy. Come on.
I don't know.
Bayport and Spash playing hockey, so we got to put a little friendly wager on this bad boy.
Here or there.
And I hear Bayport is good. I'm going to be at the game, and it's at Spash. Are you going to be there?
I mean, I could. I mean, are you broadcasting?
I'm not broadcasting. I'm actually yelling at the student fans to tell them to stop yelling obscenities at the other team.
You're that guy. Boo.
But, yeah, I'm what they call the buzzkill. So I'm going to be there yelling at kids. But we're going to see. Apparently, I was told by the coach that Bayport is really good, and it's going to be a really tough game. So What's our friendly wager? We got to come up with a friendly wager here. Since I'm a Spash guy, you're a Bayport guy.
Are you going to want goals? I mean, are you going to? Is there a big difference? Is Spash any good?
We're pretty good. We did play Notre Dame out of Green Bay, and we lost 6-0. Notre Dame's really tough.
It's my alumni. That's where I went. I
Is
get
it
it.
really?
Yeah. Well, I'm a Promontory guy. Whoa. Went to Promontory. They closed my school because Abbott Pennings couldn't handle their money situation. Big Catholic problems. They had to join us. Now they'll tell you differently. So then I was the first official graduating class in Notre Dame in 1992.
Wow. Do I need to start talking like, hey, we need to come over here, okay? I went to Notre Dame.
So let me tell you this, though. We voted as a student body. We voted for the colors, the mascot, and the name of the school.
Wow.
The top vote was like 70% was gray and black or silver and black.
Mm-hmm.
The mascot was a Kodiak bear, and it was St. Michael's. And that got more votes. And they're like, whatever everybody votes, that's what we're going to do. So that was like 80% of the vote. And then they're like, nope, Kelly green and blue, we're the Tritons. It's like, what? We sound like a bunch of turds.
Well, yeah, that's who we're playing tomorrow. Not Notre Dame, but we're playing. Notre Dame killed us. Notre Dame's really good.
Yeah, they recruit.
But yeah, well, we're not going to get into that. But yeah, they do. Eaters.
All right, what can we wait? What can they wager?
What are we going to wager here? We got to come up with something.
Yeah, we're a long time off from soccer. It'd be easier if we were getting together. That'd be simple.
Yeah.
All right. We'll think about that.
We'll have to think about that because maybe shoot me a text and then maybe we'll put it onto interwebs on the social medias. And we'll come up with a friend.
How about this? If somebody has an idea, tweet it, Twitter it.
There we go.
Bird it, whatever it is. Send it out because I'd be willing to bet because Bayport's probably going to win. Let's be honest. We're pretty good.
Yeah. Mason Keller's going to put one in on you.
Actually, I heard Bayport traveled today, so we don't get jet lag tomorrow. So we're going to spend the night and be ready.
Yeah. Just wait till you see what we slipped in your drinks at the local hotel.
Are you at your own ice rink, or did you have to rent that too? Hey-o!
Actually, we rent it.
Yeah, so do we.
Yeah, we don't. We're not rich enough to have our own.
No, we don't either. So, all right. Well, let's wait and see, and then we'll text it. We'll have fun with it.
Yeah, maybe I'll put that out on the interwebs on the social medias, and then we'll put what we're going to wager out on there once we figure it out.
Perfect.
All right.
Looking forward to
Sounds good. Hey, I'm going to try to do outro music. Let's see how this works.
Yeah.
Here you go.